Welcome back to the show, everyone. So today we're going to be delving into the relationship between your financial situation and mental well-being. This is something that is incredibly relevant now more than ever, especially here in Canada and especially as students. So I wanted to give some practical tips about how to properly budget, make a long-term savings plan, and just to also touch initially on a little bit about the psychology behind financial anxiety and just how your finances can very deeply be connected to your emotional well-being. So I've actually broken this episode down into individual chapters. So we're going to begin with understanding financial stress. Now, I think as always, it's important to obviously start with definitions so we can clearly understand what we're talking about. Obviously, this is not an obscure concept, but there are very clear symptoms of financial stress that exhibit themselves in forms of anxiety or depression or just a constant nagging in the back of your mind about frugality, where you're constantly thinking about how you can afford the next bill or whether you're not going to be able to afford putting food on the table or making your student payments or any sort of, or your bills and your utilities and everything. So that's how we're going to define financial stress in this case. And of course, there are the prevailing symptoms of this kind of stress, which include anxiety, depression, and a big one which isn't often highlighted enough, but relationship stress and relationship strain. So there's obviously a few root causes that we can identify to help establish the problem more deeply. Things, for example, like unexpected payments. Unexpected payments can be an immense stressor on a lot of people. For example, I don't know if anybody has pets or whatnot, but for example, your pet all of a sudden needs to go see the vet, and now you're being charged $500 extra out of nowhere. Those kind of things can really put both an individual and a couple under severe financial pressure. There's also, of course, the matter of debt, which I'm sure most of us are pretty familiar with. I included have student debt accrued over the course of my undergrad. And it's obviously something that's in the back of my mind, knowing that I have to pay that off. Of course, there's also inadequate savings. This is something that I was very guilty of for the longest time. But yeah, not having savings that you can kind of dip into in a hard situation or in a moment of need can also be a very scary thought. And of course, finally, there is living paycheck to paycheck, which is the unfortunate reality of a lot of people. Now, these causes can all be very problematic because they are closely linked to mental health decline. And being under chronic financial stress can lead to severe mental health issues. So obviously I've already mentioned anxiety and depression, but this can be a very serious issue, not just overall depression, but it becomes a point where the only thing on your mind is money, constantly. I was very recently going through the same thing. In fact, for a pretty large period of time recently, I've been constantly thinking about the next payment, about scrutinizing every single little bill, whether it's worth purchasing something, foods and whatnot. It's a very serious issue. And I think that this is all the more reason that it needs to be highlighted, and we need to take a minute to pause and understand it a little bit further. So this brings us neatly into the second chapter, which is the psychology behind money. Now, I'd like to discuss a little bit about how emotions can very significantly impact and drive our financial decisions, and a lot of times they can lead to impulsive spending or the complete opposite, extreme frugality. So I'm sure we all know somebody that is an excessive spender in their lives. And more often than not, these people, just as much as those that are extra frugal, are doing so from an emotional perspective. And I know it's hard to get somebody that is a chronic spender to kind of pump the brakes a little bit, but it's something that needs to be brought up. And especially if it's in a relationship setting, it is something that you need to sit down and have a very serious discussion about. Budgeting as a couple is incredibly significant to the longevity and the success of that couple. So I hope that the next time that there's a purchase decision to be made, you can look at it from a more rational perspective and actually assess whether that thing that you're looking at is necessary or if it's something that is just a want and you're kind of blanketing that want with all these needs and all these reasons that it's a must-have, let's say. So there's also, of course, the influence of background, and I think an individual's upbringing can very significantly influence how their relationship with money develops as they age. For example, in my case, my parents have always been very much the kind of people that if we had some money, we would spend it. Why not? That's what it's there for. Let's go on a trip. Let's go enjoy food outside. Let's go, do activities and whatnot. But as much as that is amazing for living in the moment, when it comes to long-term strategy, it's not the most effective for understanding how to properly save for the future. And this is something that I've very much paid for because that's how I viewed money for the longest time. And it's taken a lot of effort to come to the point where I actually understand the value of that dollar, let's say, or that euro. I look at it more so as when I go to make a purchase, I'm almost looking at it as an exchange. And if that thing that I'm trying to purchase is offering me more intrinsic value to me, then I find it worth it. But if it's just I don't know, just a formality, just something that why not, then I actually take that moment to sit back and reassess the decision, let's say. This brings us finally to chapter 3, which is budgeting and how we can use it as a tool for peace and for mental clarity. Now, this was the biggest hurdle for me to get over. Given that I had never really had this positive, forward-thinking relationship with money, I never really took the time to actually budget. And I paid for it, and I'm telling you that it's not that hard to fix. You just have to start. So I'd like to offer kind of a step-by-step way that I formed my budget, and then hopefully it's a way that you can proceed with forming yours too. Now, I have gone through a bajillion budgeting tools or apps online or whatever, or even templates on Excel and whatnot. But my kind of all-in-one platform has been Notion for the longest time. And if you are looking for something that's more statistical and more analytical, of course, Excel is the way to go. And there are thousands and thousands of beautifully and very well-made templates that you can download for free. I would honestly say start with the simplest one, because if you go to something that is immediately complex with a million forms and a million fields to fill out, it's going to be almost impossible to keep yourself on top of it, because it's a lot of information. It's quite a time sink, especially in the beginning where you're having to fill all of the context out instead of just your daily expenditure. So, like I said, Notion is my go-to for my all-in-one expenses package, and I happen to find a template as well, which I'll link in the description. But it's a very, very simple model. You basically have a portion where I input my daily expenses, and I try and keep on top of this every day, but maybe if not every other day. And then there are the categories. So each expense is assigned a specific category, whether it be bills and utilities or entertainment or food or drink or shopping or anything like that. Then I also have a category for incomes and for any sources of income, as well as a category for expense for investments. My apologies. And then I input the values for that, and I can basically directly see the summed total of whatever that category is per month. So when you're trying to set out a bit of a budget, I think the best thing that you can do initially is just write it out for a couple months, track everything that you're spending without much alteration, and just see what your kind of baseline expenses are. Then from there, you can identify which sectors or which categories, let's say, you feel like you're overspending in, and then you can try and bring it back down a little bit. So for example, the big one that I noticed initially was my expenses for food out of the house. In other words, purchasing food. That was way too high, and I'm pretty sure many of us can relate to that. But yeah, once I identified that, I made a conscious effort to start cutting back. And if I saw, for example, that I was spending roughly, let's say, $400 per month or something like that, then I would make a conscious effort to budget that up to 300, let's say, and then you can build off of that momentum. Yeah, I think that there is a immense amount of mental clarity and calm that you can obtain when you start budgeting. I know it's kind of scary when you're, especially in a hard financial situation, to kind of track all of these expenses without much income coming in. But trust me, in the long term, it is so much better for your stability. I really cannot put enough emphasis on this. Even in my case, I've mentioned this before, but recently lost my job, unfortunately, and it has been definitely a stressful period. but I have maintained and am attempting to constantly maintain my budget up to date, so that way even when I look back at it, I can at least still see, okay, I'm not letting things go out of control. I'm not kind of ignoring it and hoping it goes away. I'm observing it so I can make sure that it's still handled to the best of my ability, basically. And yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to get at when it comes to budgeting. I really feel like it's a tool that you can use to gain some peace. When you can observe something and track it, you can change it. And you can also feel like you're more under control because you are. So I hope that that's a kind of a perspective shift that you can maybe undertake when it comes to financial situations and planning and budgeting and that kind of thing. So yeah, please let me know if you give Notion a go, or if you give any sort of Excel budgets a go. I'm truly looking forward to hearing back from any of you for your feedback. Yeah. So this brings us to chapter 4, which is related specifically to debt management, and moreover than that, also your relationship with money and that debt. So, all right, obviously there is a very prominent stress factor associated with debt. And it's very easy to also kind of push it to the back of your mind, though, where you kind of forget about it because it's not imposing anything on top of you right now. Like in terms of, let's say, student debt, if you haven't been asked to pay it back yet, or, those payments are going to be in the future, it's very easy to forget about that and kind of focus on the next shiny thing that you want to buy without understanding that, okay, maybe I shouldn't be making those purchases given that I have 30K that I need to cover back. So I think it's also important to kind of be a little bit more conscious about this and make sure that when you are making those decisions to purchase something, not all the time, but do kind of weigh the pros and cons of whether it's worth maybe setting that money aside, and then over time that money will accrue. It will increase, and it'll actually become a substantial chunk that you can carve out of that debt. Yeah, so I think one of the main priorities that you can also have is to set aside a dedicated amount of money per month for that debt. If it's a concurrent and an ongoing debt, let's say your car payment or something like that. Of course, there is also a practice of, if you want to call your bank and negotiate or something like that, but that's probably not as relevant to many of us. But I think looking into maybe tutorials online on YouTube or whatnot about how to make a strategic payment plan, then that could possibly bring a little bit of benefit to some people as well. The next chapter is how to build a healthier relationship with money. So what I really hope that I can leave with everybody is how to be a little bit more mindful with your spending. So I think it is worth taking a step back again to kind of identify your spending habits. Like if you know that you have kind of a weakness for a certain type of spending, whether it's something that you're collecting, or whether it's decorations for your home, or whether it's anything that you understand is an unnecessary item, but just something that you kind of want. I think it's important to obviously allow yourself some of those joys, but also maybe consider a bit more moderation, a bit more balance. I think there's also a lot to do with how you perceive your current situation. What I'm trying to get at is how grateful you are, let's say, for what you currently have. And I feel like when you take more time to actually appreciate like the little things that you have in your life, whether it be literally anything, it could be an apartment, it could be a piece of furniture, it could be your living situation, it could be your car, it could be anything that you currently have. We should all be very grateful for the things that we have been afforded in life. And obviously, there's a long journey ahead. We're going to be accruing more things and things and things as we grow and whatnot. But I think the key thing is, if you're grateful for what you have now, you're always going to be grateful for the things you're going to have in the future. And that positive relationship will extend into your career as you start making more money. Fingers crossed for all of us. Yeah, and I think it's also very, very important that as a form of practice, we take the time to set up short-term goals. So whether it be saving for something in the short term, let's say it's I don't know, like a new TV or something that you need to save a little bit of money for. Actually, a good one is a trip. So if you can have the proper practice to set aside a few bucks every month for a trip, let's say coming in the summer, then it can really ingrain the practice in you. I think that's actually a really good example because many of us obviously want to take trips annually, but I feel like it very often comes time that people are like, oh, let's buy this ticket, but we all somehow find no money to do so. And I think that if we were to instead plan ahead 3, 4, 5, 6 months in advance, if you just put $100 away for 6 months, that's your flight there. So I think it's important to set up these kind of short-term goals to train the practice. Then this can bring us neatly into chapter 6, which is on financial planning and future security. So this is a very critical thing. Like I mentioned, my family has never really had a history of long-term savings, and it's definitely been biting us in the ass a little bit. But it's something that I have really taken a strong undertaking in because I've understood its value right now. Like I said, again, being open, I lost my job. But because I was able to save a lot in advance, I'm not under the same stress given that I'm looking for a job, but I don't have the time right now because of school and whatever else, work and whatnot. I can actually have that little bit of a fallback to dip into, and that's huge. And this obviously extends and has much more severe implications the older we get and the closer we get to a family. Imagine if one of us is all of a sudden sick when working with a family, and all of a sudden you can't provide for that family. Without having that reserve to dip into, that can be an immensely stressful period, which nobody should have to go through, especially if there's such a simple fix. So I hope that I can emphasize enough that the importance of having a savings fund, something that's long term, something that you don't touch, and just kind of pretend, maybe even set up an automated system to take it directly out of your account. I would actually really recommend using an app, for example, like Wealthsimple. They are phenomenal as an all-in-one banking platform, but they also offer the option to move a portion or as many funds as you want into a direct investment portfolio. So they can invest on your behalf, or you could do direct investments yourself, or they can even direct any cash back that you get by using the card to an investment portfolio as well. So some sort of a platform like that where you unconsciously are feeding into this pool that will eventually serve you for the future. And I know it sounds a little bit boring compared to trading stocks or day trading or crypto or anything like that, but having dipped my toes into quite a few of those avenues, I think for the long term, obviously if you want to make the time to learn and become proficient at one of those skills, all power to you, please. But yeah, I do feel like for the long term, for people that are just kind of sitting there, I think it's far smarter to have your money sitting in a pool that's automatically accruing interest, as opposed to just having your money sitting in an account, which is basically just diminishing in value because of inflation. So that's one of the biggest takeaways that I could think of too. If you have a good amount of money saved up, don't just let it sit there. Just put it in any sort of account. Wealthsimple offers a 4% annual interest on your entire account balance. So, for example, if you had 20K in your account, you're all of a sudden making $800 a year for free just by having your money in that account. There's another app called Coho. They also offer up to 5% on your entire balance, but they have a premium subscription, which is roughly $200 a year. But still, let's say you have 20K in your account, you're still accruing $800 for free, minus the $200 for the enrollment and the subscription. So little things like that go a very long way. And finally, I think that it is very important to also understand how to manage the anxiety when it comes on. So one of the biggest stress management techniques that I have preached for probably the whole length of this podcasting series is mindfulness. Mindfulness coupled with exercise. So meditation and mindful journaling and whatnot can really be a good way to vent the problems that might be like, scrambling around your brain and whatnot. And it really does help. Whenever you can get those thoughts out of your head and onto a piece of paper, it feels like an immediate relief. And especially when it comes to financial situations, it's also very helpful to kind of write down why you're so stressed at the moment and kind of outline, okay, I have this bill coming up and then this and then this and then this. And then tackle them one at a time. Instead of having all 10 of them in your head, you can kind of lay them out and say, okay, I can get through this bill, and I just need to set aside a little bit of money for this, and I can cross that one off, and et cetera, et cetera. Exercise is also a very good one. Obviously not as practical as writing something down, but a lot of times just getting a little bit of movement can clear your head and help you refocus and just prioritize again. And yeah, of course, meditation, like I mentioned, mindfulness meditation as well. Taking a moment to just settle your mind a little bit can be a little bit daunting, especially when you have so much rattling in your head. But if you're able to do it, all power to you. It really is a moment of clarity that can help you refocus and tackle the problem instead of allowing it to consume your mind. Of course, there is professional assistance that you can seek. I would recommend maybe just calling the source of the debt itself, or the source of the financial stress in the first place, and directly maybe negotiating. Another thing that I actually kind of want to highlight on this is it's taken me a while to understand, but to make the realization, let's say the click, but everybody on the other end of that phone is a human. They're another person, they have emotions, and if you just talk to them human to human, you can get a lot more than you initially think. So if you call and just be really spoken from the heart, say, hey, like, this is the situation, I'm stressing out, how can we work together to solve this? That's the key way that you can approach this. Ask them how we can solve it. And that way you can come to a constructive solution together. And of course, we also can talk a little bit about financial support systems, a little bit more abstract, but I think it's worth, for example, maybe if you know that you're going through this, discussing with maybe close friends or family, and just being open about the situation. Express the situation that you're in. I know it's for some reason a bit taboo in today's culture, but I really think that needs to be abolished immediately. I feel like we should be openly able to talk about money as it comes and goes, because it is important that we all understand where we're at and how influential money really is for us. So if you feel like you have close enough friends that you can be open with and maybe have them kind of hold you accountable for keeping with your budget or sticking with your goals or whatnot, then that would be an excellent solution to not only motivate yourself, but maybe even motivate your friends too. So yeah, that's everything, guys. I hope that this episode really empowered you to kind of take charge of your financial situation. Take that step back and just give it a once over. Analyze, look at what's going on, see the spots that you can fix, and maybe take those minor actions to start fixing them. And I really do hope that it can give you a little bit of clarity and a little bit of peace, because I know with how bad things have been in this country right now, it's very hard to focus on anything but money. But I promise that this will also get better. We're all going to make it through. It might be a little bit rough to get through, but we're going to make it through, and we're going to be all the better for it. So yeah, I hope that you guys enjoyed this episode, and I'm looking forward to any feedback. So yeah, peace, guys.